Anticipation is high for Prime Minister Mark Carney's meeting this coming week, with Chinese President Xi Jinping, and any signs of a diplomatic or economic breakthrough as Carney looks to reset the relationship with China. Carney last met with Xi in October when he accepted the Chinese leader's invitation for a visit. There are, of course, a number of irritants between Canada and China. Most recently, Canada imposing a 100% tariff on all Chinese-made electric vehicles. In return, China slapped down an almost 76% tariff on canola seed. Trade between the two countries is on the top of the agenda for this week's trip. Joining me now is Kody Blois. He is the Prime Minister's parliamentary secretary, and he will be joining the Prime Minister on this trip in China. Nice to see you. Thank you for making the time.
Happy New Year, Rose.
Happy New Year to you. And I know not the first time you've been in China. You were there fairly recently with the Premier of Saskatchewan. But this is the first time now that a Prime Minister will visit China in, I think, almost 8 years. How big a deal is that, and how much are you expecting things to move because of this visit?
This is a big deal.
Yes.
I mean, when we think about China being the second largest economy in the world, certainly the most populous, and one that has great global influence, we think, and the Prime Minister believes, it's important that we're at least getting at the table and having the dialogue. Yeah. You mentioned the fact that it's been 9 years since a Prime Minister has been to China. It had been 8 years since there had been a leader-to-leader meeting.
That's right. Yeah.
I had the opportunity to join the Prime Minister in Korea when he met with President Xi, who described that moment as a turning point in the relationship. This trip next week is a continuation of that turning point in the relationship. The Prime Minister would like to recalibrate it. He believes there's opportunity for partnership, that there's opportunity that China plays a role amongst the many countries that we are building relationships with as part of our idea to be able to build out more trade around the world.
Okay, so let's talk about sort of the irritants. The EV tariffs, 100% EV tariffs on Chinese EVs. China then responded by putting tariffs on canola. There's also been some damage done to the seafood industry. How much of your conversations have been about eliminating or reducing the tariffs on both sides of that?
So the Prime Minister's visit, of course, yes, those are important to Canadian stakeholders. But at the same time, the Prime Minister believes that there's an opportunity to look bigger and longer term about where the partnership is going. So yes, that's part of the conversation, Rosie, but it's not the only one. We think there's opportunities. You think about energy opportunity to Asia. Sure. China represents a potential buyer for Canadian energy. We think on agriculture and agri-food, there's opportunity for cooperation. China is doing a lot in the space of climate change and environment. That's something the Prime Minister and the government takes great pride in as well. And so there's probably opportunities there to partner.
Sure, but how do you move forward with all these new opportunities until you get rid of these big problems?
What I would say is it's part of the discussion. You know, I'm not at liberty, if Minister LeBlanc was on here talking about the dialogue he's having with the United States, we have Minister Anand, Minister Sidhu, Minister MacDonald, the Prime Minister. I'm not going to go into great detail, but of course that is part of the dynamic of what the Prime Minister is putting forward as part of his trip next week.
Should we expect results next week?
Again, I'm not in the position to be able to, I'm not going to do that on national television, Rosie. I appreciate that you're going to ask that question. What I would say and what Canadians should understand is that we know the importance of what the Chinese market means from an economic perspective. We understand some of the sensitivities in the domestic sector, and at all times this Prime Minister is going to be focused on what the best interests are for Canadians. And again, I want to reiterate that we have a goal to double non-U.S. exports over the next 10 years. China is a part of that strategy. It's not the only piece. I think it's important to highlight the work that we've done with Indonesia, for example, on a free trade agreement. The Prime Minister after China is headed to Qatar. And also we've announced with the UAE $70 billion of foreign direct investment opportunities into the country. So this is part of a bigger strategy that the Prime Minister and the government's focused on.
The EV tariff in particular was to align Canada with what the United States was doing. Now that we find ourselves in the position we are in, particularly under these punishing sectoral tariffs, does that become less important that we are aligned with the U.S. when it comes to the kinds of things that they are doing to deal with China?
Again, on the specifics of the conversation, I'm not going to go into those levels of details.
No, but just in general, whether we have to consider what the U.S. is doing as we consider how we are re-engaging with China.
Of course, the United States is an important trading partner, but I think one thing has been abundantly clear with the Prime Minister and the government, and when I go home to my constituents, for example, Rosie and Kings Hands, they want to see the Government of Canada and the Prime Minister doing work around the world to build that trade resiliency. So we're going to be making decisions that are always in the best interests of Canadians. agreements. We understand that it's a delicate moment right now for the Canadian auto industry, for example, that they need a level of certainty. But at the end of the day, our focus is, again, on building those relationships. And I know you want to put a lot of focus on what I would call meaningful but short-term irritants. The Prime Minister also sees a longer-term opportunity to cooperate. There, of course, in the interview that you had with him before Christmas, he identified there is going to be some areas of guardrails where we're not going to cooperate with China, obviously. But we think that there's a pragmatic and constructive landing spot to be able to have those conversations.
Thank you for listening or watching to that interview, because I was going to ask you that question about, it is always complicated, Canada's relationship with China, sometimes extremely, given the two Michaels, but other times just because of human rights concerns. So how do you navigate that when you are going to start resetting the relationship? Do those things that are problematic in terms of values, because that's also something the Prime Minister talks a lot about, do those things get raised in a leader-to-leader meeting? Or is it important that Canada have parameters or markers around those things?
What I think it's important that Canada has is an opportunity for dialogue. And again, having sat in on the bilateral meeting in Korea, the Prime Minister was very clear with President Xi that there is a whole host of opportunities that we think we can partner. There'll be areas that we can't. But we also feel it's important to have that leader-to-leader relationship and dialogue that opens up diplomatic channels for the conversations on the things that you mentioned that we have to make sure there's a pathway to be able to raise constructively. But I'll remind Canadians, if we don't have that type of dialogue, if we haven't been to China in 8 years, if we haven't had a leader-to-leader meeting, none of that happens. And so if we want to be able to engage in good faith, we have to be at the table. The Prime Minister started this work back in June of 2025 with his call with Premier Lee. It continued with a meeting with Premier Lee at UNGA in September. Of course, President Xi, and this is at the invitation of President Xi to come to, obviously officially under Premier Lee, but the President made sure that this was a personal invitation to the Prime Minister. Certainly from a protocol perspective, this is something the Chinese attach great importance to, and I think it's a reflection of the respect that the President has for the Prime Minister.
There was some reporting this week after what happened in Venezuela that the Chinese are now looking at Canadian oil, perhaps in a different way. You mentioned energy. Is it possible that this becomes a bigger market for us there in terms of our oil resources?
Look, I'm not going to weigh in on the Venezuela piece or what China may think. That's for China to say. What I would say is that there's already significant energy exports that Canada sends to Asia writ large, and China is a large customer and client as part of buying Canadian energy. Obviously, if they have a desire to want to buy more for whatever reason they may choose, that's something that's good for Canadian workers. It's good for Canadian exports. It's good for the Canadian economy. So we're completely open to the conversation. I think it's important. I come from a rural area, Rosie. I always say Canada has the ability to feed and fuel the world, whether it's in agriculture and agri-food, on a whole host of energy opportunities. We are truly a global superpower in those spaces. The Prime Minister recognizes that. Whether it's China, whether it's other countries in Asia that are looking for Canadian energy, completely open to those conversations.
I'll just end on this, because it is related. This is about the Prime Minister diversifying trade, finding new trading relationships. It comes, again, the same week that the President and the White House said military force to take Greenland is not out of the question. Is that troubling, given that the President has previously said he wants to make Canada the 51st state? When you hear that kind of language, as you attempt to do these things, build these new relationships, is there even more pressure, I would ask, on the Prime Minister, on you, on the government to do these things right now?
The Prime Minister, I think, called it an inflection point or perhaps a rupture in the relationship that we've had. I think the Prime Minister has been very pragmatic about the fact that the United States will continue to be a very important trading partner, a close ally, but at the same time, Canadians expect us to build out resiliency in our trade. And so that impetus was on April 29th when we were given a mandate by Canadians to do the work that we're doing exactly. We're going to continue it. I've had the ability to see the Prime Minister firsthand in his work. He is tireless in wanting to pursue this. He spent a lot of time internationally, but he's been able to draw in a lot of benefit as well in terms of the free trade agreements that we're establishing, that we have to make sure that we're explaining to Canadians why this matters.
Okay. Kody Blois, safe travels. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
As you heard, the tariffs on Canadian canola will be a priority for the Prime Minister and the delegation. Canada is the largest canola exporter in the world, with China the world's largest importer. China's tariffs on canola seed landed in August. That's right, of course, at the start of last year's fall harvest, to have the maximum impact on Canadian producers, putting the pressure on the Prime Minister to make a deal. Bill Prybylski is the president of Agriculture Producers Association of Saskatchewan and co-owner, alongside his brother, of their 14,000-acre family farm. Nice to see you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate you being here. I want to just get a sense, Bill, about what your farm looks like, how many acres are dedicated to canola. Paint me a picture of what it looks like.
Sure. So our farm is located in east central Saskatchewan, just west of Yorkton. It's obviously a very significant canola growing area. So yeah, I farm with my brother and a couple nephews and my son on about 16,000 acres. Wow. 14,000 of which is dedicated to annual cropping. The balance is for our livestock operation. And of that 14,000 acres, about 25% of that is seeded to canola every year. 25% would be pulses, and the balance would be cereals.
Okay, so how much of that portion, the canola portion, makes up sort of how much you rely on that growth and that market for your farm to succeed?
Well, certainly, the canola is 25% of our seeded acres, but it accounts for definitely a larger percentage of our revenue every year. It's been a staple on most farms in the prairie since the early 70s. So, we rely on it to pay our bills for sure.
What has been the impact then on these tariffs, these Chinese tariffs, on the canola portion of your business? I don't know if you can give me a dollar figure or how you want to characterize it.
It's a significant impact. We're fortunate that our yields were pretty decent here this last year. We're probably looking at about $100 a ton hit from the tariffs. So, on my farm, that's $450,000. That's just not there. On top of that, there's the tariffs on the peas, which are also a part of our cropping plans that also taken a significant cut in commodity prices for our peas. So that's another hurt for our farm.
That is a big amount. What has been the impact then on? I mean, it's a family farm, but I don't know if you have people who work for you or if you've had to reduce salary. Like, what have you had to do?
Yeah, certainly it is a family-owned farm that we all contribute our labor. We do have hired folks as well. So far as I mentioned, we've been fortunate. We've had good yields this past year, so we're able to make our financial commitments. But certainly, anything going forward, we're having a very close look at where we're going to be spending our dollars, because we know they are going to be limited. Yeah. So looking at things like delaying purchases of farm equipment that maybe we need it, but we can make do for another year. Those are the type of decisions that we're going to have to make here in the next little while.
So what are you hoping comes of this trip to China from the Prime Minister and others going with him? What are you hoping would be the best outcome here?
Well, ultimately, an end to the tariffs. That's what we need, and not expecting that this trip is going to be the end of the tariffs by the end of next week. But we're hoping that this is the start of the end, so that the negotiations can continue on, and there's got to be a give and take from both sides. I'm assuming in any negotiation. So we're hopeful that there will be some positive outcomes from this trip that will give us some hope going forward, so that producers are starting to look at making their seeding plans for next year, and how does the continuing tariffs, how does that affect people's plans for this coming growing season?
And you said there has to be give and take. Do you think that the give that Canada has to do is to give up the tariff on electric vehicles, Chinese electric vehicles, even though that's what the U.S. has put in place too?
It appears that that's what China is. I mean, that was the start of the whole tariff war in the first place. Was the EVs on the tariffs on EVs. So, whether that is a possibility from our perspective out here in the prairies, EVs are something that really makes no sense out here. So it's a feeling here and a frustration on most producers' parts that we're paying the price for something that is really not affecting us, other than we're paying the price for it.
Are you hopeful or confident that this Prime Minister can make some progress here?
We're certainly hopeful. I guess as farmers, notoriously, we're always hopeful and optimistic that there's going to be light at the end of the tunnel. So, our premier has been in China, and he indicated that the Chinese officials are willing to talk about it. So, this is obviously a step that needs to happen, and we're certainly glad that it's finally going to happen, and the Prime Minister will be over there to talk to the officials in China, and we're hopeful that there will be some positive outcomes.
Bill Prybylski, a farmer and president of the Agricultural Producers Association of Saskatchewan, thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Mark Carney heads to China in a matter of days to start a critical trade mission, the latest effort to reset a strained relationship between the two countries. The chill began in 2018 when Canada arrested Huawei executive Meng Wanzhou acting on a U.S. extradition request. Beijing responded by detaining two Canadians, Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, in what was seen as an effort to hit back at Canada for Meng's arrest. More recently, Canada and China have slapped tariffs on each other's exports. Carney's office says that he will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping to discuss trade, energy, agriculture, and international security. The meeting comes as Canada continues efforts to diversify trade away from the U.S. with a goal of doubling non-U.S. exports within the next decade. As the Prime Minister heads to China later this week, BC Premier David Eby is leading his own trade mission to India.
British Columbia is currently the largest trading partner India has in Canada, and we're looking to expand that. By expanding our trade with India, we are able to provide support to communities across the province that have been particularly impacted by Trump's tariffs.
A key focus of the mission there is to promote BC's forestry sector as well as energy and mining. Like China, Ottawa's relations with India have shifted since Carney came into power, with the Prime Minister accepting Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's invitation to visit this year. I'm joined now by BC's Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth, Ravi Kahlon. Nice to see you, Minister.
Rosemary, thank you for having me.
You're in India already. There, as part of this delegation, you and the Premier, a trade delegation to India. You have said that BC has the highest share of exports to India of any province in Canada. Tell me what you're hoping to do on this trade mission.
Well, it's been many years since we've actually been able to engage with our partners in India. And so our goal is two-part. One, it's to re-engage and find mutual ground and opportunities. And second is to be able to move some of our products forward. We have obviously some goals about diversifying our markets in forestry, in critical minerals and natural energy, technology. And India is soon to be the third largest economy in the world, and we want to make sure we capitalize on that.
And so tell me, why was it not a priority before? What was sort of standing in your way?
Well, it's always been a priority, but we always rely on the federal government to either open doors or close doors. In this case, we had to wait for the federal government to reestablish relationships with the Indian government. They have, and that's why the opportunity is open now for us to have this trade mission happening right now.
Okay, and I'll come back to some of the reasons why the doors were closed. But I know that the Premier pointed to his recent trip to Asia as sort of a success, getting big investments in BC, the LNG Phase 2 project, for instance. Are you hoping for a big project like that from India, or what kinds of things are you looking for there?
Well, we're in 4 different states and 4 different cities, and we see different opportunities in each. Of course, in Delhi, we're meeting with business leaders here for the next 2 days, Indian Oil, et cetera. In Bangalore, we're really focused on life sciences and AI and quantum. That is considered the Silicon Valley of India, and so it's an important partner for us. In Mumbai, we see opportunities around energy and, most importantly, our forest products. We need to diversify. We need to find new markets. And that's what we'll be doing. And then lastly, in Punjab, it's going to be around agri-technology and agriculture overall. So we see opportunities in our various sectors when we're here, and we're hoping to both open the doors, second, to make sure people understand what opportunities there are in BC for investment.
I was surprised, frankly, that forestry was such a focus of this trip. I obviously have done a number of interviews about the problems in the forestry sector in BC because of U.S. tariffs. What is your sense about being able to replace or grow that market in India through the forestry sector?
Well, it's a challenge. The U.S. is such a big player for our forestry products, and one jurisdiction isn't going to replace that demand. No. But we know if we can increase our products going to multiple markets, we can help offset some of the impacts from that. In India, there's a great deal of interest in our forest products, in making doors, in making furniture, and that's what we're exploring here. We've got a whole host of companies that have expressed interest in buying more of our products. And what we're here to do is to explore with them what that would look like and what needs to happen for them to be able to make larger purchases from Canada.
We talked off the top there about doors being closed. So let's talk about the elephant in the room in this case. I think it was just before Christmas that the Premier partnered with the federal government to address really a surge of extortion for around South Asian communities in Surrey, in other parts of BC. How much of that will be addressed on this trip? I realize it's trade focused, but are you planning to raise those concerns?
Well, those concerns, of course, are always there. And we do rely on the federal government to be able to have those kind of nation-to-nation conversations. The Indian central government and our national government, those are the places for that. Our focus on the trip is really with different states. We're not really engaging with the central government here. We leave that to our federal counterparts. Sure. We're trying to engage with the Delhi government, the Punjab government, the Haryana government on different matters from subnational perspective.
And I get that, and it's good to respect jurisdictions, but I do wonder about, because we're talking about the Prime Minister heading to China on this program too, and I do wonder about how you balance both the concerns, real concerns that you have inside British Columbia around, potentially agents of the Indian government extorting Canadian citizens, and then trying to develop and diversify a trading relationship. How are you balancing those two things, Minister?
Well, I would say that, there are a lot of concerns with many countries, unfortunately. And what we've been doing from day one is making sure that the federal government understands that if there's real credible information that's come forward where a country is involved in a matter, we want that to be, A, shared with us, because we don't necessarily always get that information. Second, for them to start addressing that with those nations. And, we've had, for example, a killing of someone in Vancouver happening. And what we've said is we want justice. We want the people that are responsible to be caught and tried. If the federal government has information, I think the public needs to see it. And what we've been saying from day one is if the federal government feels that they have sufficiently addressed those challenges, then they can open the door, and they have opened that door. We've seen also from the Indian government just recently making some arrests of members who claim to be involved in some of the extortion cases. I think that's some progress, and we're hoping to continue to see that as we go forward.
Yeah, and I should point out, obviously, that the Indian government denies that there's anyone acting on their behalf in Canada. But yes, there are ongoing, I think, efforts in terms of criminal investigations on both ends. I'll just end with this, Minister. How much pressure do you feel, given what's happening with the United States, to open these doors, to come back with something, whether it be a project or jobs or the opportunity?
Yeah. Well, we're realistic. What we've learned through years of doing this work is that it takes time to build those relationships. It's not as simple as, hey, we've shown up and we have critical minerals and you should buy it from us. It takes time. You have to come here multiple times. We've already heard that for the last 24 hours we've been here. People are saying, well, hey, great, we want to do business with you. Where have you been? And we're saying, yeah, we're here. We're going to reestablish relationships. And so we're realistic. We're not expecting it to be a magic switch. But at the same time, we do see a lot of opportunities for good paying jobs here in British Columbia and opportunities for our companies to be able to export to this, soon to be the third largest economy in the world.
BC's Minister of Jobs and Economic Growth, Ravi Kahlon, in India. Thank you for joining us, sir. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rosemary. Stay safe.